Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Making America Great Again, the Roaring Twenties, Between Two Wars, 1927, Part 1 of 2. If you want to check out my previous reactions to other Between Two Wars videos, remember the playlist card will be at the top. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
In 1927, the United States is in the third year of recovery after a steep recession in the early 20s. And in May, the Dow Jones Index on the New York Stock Exchange recovers to the inflation-adjusted value from just before when the U.S. entered World War I. The U.S. economy is now heading towards the height of the Roaring Twenties. Welcome to Between Two Wars, a chronological summary of the interwar years, covering all facets of life, the uncertainty, hedonism, and euphoria, and ultimately, humanity's descent into the darkness of the Second World War. I'm Indy Nidell. In our 1921 episode that covered U.S. isolationism, we saw how President Warren G. Harding was loosening the reins on the American markets. Now in 1927, since Harding's sudden death in office in 1923, his Vice President Calvin Coolidge has been at the helm of the United States. Together with Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover, President Coolidge has continued a policy largely oriented at letting the financial bulls run free and uninhibited. Yes, the main focus of
No regulations, no watchdogs, nothing. Just do as you please. Yeah.
the U.S. shall be commerce, or, as the president himself famously declares, the chief business of the American people is business. Money is cheap to borrow. Any regulations that might inhibit a free market are being removed, and the economy is left largely to take care of itself. In 1927, it looks very much like this is paying off, with rapid economic growth and increasing riches for at least some of the American people.
Some of the American people, not the majority of the American people. Yeah. But you know, if you're rich, you get richer. If you're rich, sometimes you get poorer if you make a bad economic decision. And those who are middle class or poor, sometimes they strike it rich, and many times they just don't, and they're left in the doldrums. And I don't know how to feel about this, really, you know, because if you have so much money, I'm asking myself, what are you going to do with it? You only live for at least, I don't know, like 100 years or so. And then what? What happens to all this money that you've accumulated? You know, why don't you try and invest that money back into communities that need financial support? But I don't know. I don't know how to feel about telling people what to do with their money. It's just that it's just something I always think about, you know. You have so many billions of dollars, billions, in that, like, entire GDP's worth of nations. That's how much money you have. What do you do with it? Oh, but anyways, let's just continue. Sorry, guys.
In fact, it's no exaggeration to say that the U.S. economy is roaring. But only a few years ago, it had been squeaking, groaning, and faltering when depression hit as the world struggled to recover from the Great War. Sure, America's economy was doing pretty well in the war years. It supplied war-torn Europe even before it entered the conflict, and this led to a manufacturing boom. Employers were enjoying wartime wage controls, and there was full employment across the labor force. Rural America also did extremely well. With the country acting as the Allies' breadbasket, farmers enjoyed rising prices and increasing demand. This all changes when the war ends. The economies of Europe are in chaos. The demand for exports drops sharply. But America's manufacturing industry is still producing a mass of goods that they suddenly don't have anyone abroad to sell to. So domestic prices shoot up to make for the loss of profits. Meanwhile, veterans are returning from the war, causing a surplus in the labor market. All this means that by 1920, the American economy is in recession. The Ford Motor Company has to close its Michigan plants, and unemployment rises across the country, peaking at 11.7% in 1921. Farmers who had confidently bought new land and new machines on loan are now drowning in debt as falling profits force them to default on their credit. Simply put, things are not looking good. However, unlike much of Europe, America still has its economic infrastructure intact and an abundant amount of natural resources. This advantage contributes to a consumer revolution never seen before. So, one of the big contributors to the recession was overproduction. Now, before the war, Henry Ford, founder of the Ford Motor Company, had pioneered new mass production techniques that dramatically increased the efficiency and potential of American industries. Assembly lines were introduced, meaning workers only worked on one part of a product before moving it down to a colleague. Before the introduction of this technique, the assembly of a car chassis in a Ford factory took around 12 and a half hours. By 1914, this was down to 93 minutes. Well, this was all well and good when American industry had foreign markets to sell to, but
In 93 minutes, a car is ready. Wow. But who are they going to be selling these cars to? I mean, the First World War is done. People are coming back from the war. There isn't much economic activity going on now because, Europe doesn't need America's food and production and workforce to produce them the consumer goods that they need. So who are they making all of these cars that take 93 minutes to construct for? And I'm assuming there's a lot of cars. So, yeah.
the chaos of the post-war economy means that the U.S. is now churning out goods so fast, domestic demand just can't keep up. American business owners now need a way to increase consumer demand. Enter Edward Bernays. During the war, Bernays had sat on the Creel Commission, who were responsible for convincing the American public about the necessity of entering the Great War. The commission used the increasing access to print and out-of-home mass media to spread their message through a campaign of newspaper articles, ads, billboards, and public speeches. It was a huge success, and Bernays realized the commission had hit on a winning formula. Bernays is related to the famous psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, whose discovery of the unconscious mind becomes hugely influential in the new science of public relations that Bernays is pioneering. He believes that companies could make consumers want to buy new products by appealing to their unconscious mind. He says, if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing about it?
This type of thought process still works even today, in terms of the advertisements that we get through television, YouTube, your other social media content providers. They're always giving you that advertisement that tries to entice you to buy this certain thing, to buy this certain type of food. Like the McDonald's adverts, how the burgers look so juicy and it's cooked and everything, but then when you get the real thing, it just doesn't look the same, And then you'd also have those adverts with a watch. I don't even know how these marketeers make adverts for watches, because I don't understand the love affair for watches, but they make them seem so amazing and cool. You got to have that latest silver big thing on your wrist, and then also like perfumes. You see beautiful men and women going to the beach, running on the beach, in the sunset, and then after all of that, it was just for a perfume, and then you ask yourself, like, is this supposed to connect with me? But then you find out that a lot of people are actually connected with that marketeering. They love it. They love the fact that it's giving them this alluring power. Like if you buy this product, women and men, they're gonna swoon over you. They're gonna look at you. You're gonna be the strong, confident person after spraying yourself with our cologne or with our perfume. Or if you wear our watch, you will become this person. So yeah, it's dangerous. It's powerful.
Bernays publishes his thoughts in several books, and his ideas soon spread. Advertising now goes from simply listing products in newspapers to companies selling dreams of social status, happiness, power, sex. General Motors, one of Ford's big...
Okay, I never added that part. Yes, sex as well, Yeah, like for instance in the perfume industry, if you put, X, yeah, if you put X on you, then the women are gonna swoon over you. They're gonna rip off their clothing for you, and then they'll have sex with you. That's sex appeal from this product, this deodorant product. I don't know how people get caught up in those kind of adverts, but they do. Oh.
His competitors leads the way, whereas Ford's Model T is sold on its durability and affordability. General Motors start to sell their cars on the basis of how new and attractive they are. New designs are presented as the best yet, and even when fresh technologies do not emerge, General Motors redesign cosmetic aspects of their cars to give them a renewed appeal. This is accompanied by massive marketing campaigns in magazines and newspapers. Adapted to the type of reader and car, ads now feature either smiling families or attractive women laying across the fenders. These new marketing techniques lead to an explosion in consumerism. For example, the number of American households owning a radio rises from 60,000 to over 10 million. Businesses are also diversifying and expanding into new markets. In the late 1920s, Colt Firearms begins to manufacture dishwashers, and Remington Arms starts to make cutlery and vending machines. The decade sees America transformed into a consumer society. 2/3 of everything it produces is soon consumed by individuals in the domestic market. People are in a spending mood, and this helps the economy to literally...
But where are they getting the money? Where are they getting the money to spend so much of it on the consumer goods that are provided? Who is giving them loans? And when are they going to repay those loans? Hey.
Boom.
Or credit. I should say credit, right? Yeah.
A big factor in encouraging the spending spree is the introduction of consumer credit. General Motors once again leads the way. If you wanted to buy a car before or during the war, you needed to provide immediate cash payment. Some banks and companies had begun to experiment with purchase plans, but it is in 1919 when the General Motors Acceptance Corporation is established to finance automobile purchase that this trend takes off. The influential magazine, The Literary Digest, estimates that of the 4 million cars sold in 1923, only 1 million are actually bought with cash, the rest being sold on installment plans. Borrowing is no longer a sign of being poor, and it's now used to buy everything from furniture to radios to irons
and that notion of borrowing was seen as something that poor people did, right? That was flipped over its head by marketeering companies and individuals who warped the American consumer mind into thinking that, you don't have to pay it up front. You can pay it in installments. It's fine. This is a new banking adventure that you can be a part of. When this thing has been here for a very, very long time. It's just that they're calling it under a different name. They're painting it with a different coat of paint, making it all looking flashy and nice. And then the people said that, no, this loan or this credit is a new system that's been brought in by my bank, and now I'm allowed to buy this technology without paying it upfront. When this kind of things happened a long time ago, long before. But like I said, marketeering changed that all on its head. And yeah, I'm still wondering when are people going to pay for these things, because I think this is where the debt starts building up. Where people just keep on buying, keep on taking, out more loans or out more credit, buying things they cannot afford, buying things they cannot pay back in due time, and it just builds up. So I'm just wondering, when is this bubble going to burst?
Every luxury or domestic item the consumer can get their hands on. The engine behind this consumer culture is the stock market. This is a monumental change.
And there's no regulation of the stock market because the president wanted nothing of any kind of regulations or anyone as a watchdog to watch over these people so that they don't create this bubble.
Until now, the stock market has reflected the market, but now it starts driving the value of the market. Some might call this the tail wagging the dog, but no one seems to see this as a problem. Historian Charles R. Geist says that the excess spending of the decade was based on the perception that economic life was getting better all the time. Most people looked to the stock market as proof of that, and few were willing to dissuade them. So, the stock market now becomes a symbol of what will soon be called the American dream. John Raskob, a high-flying financial executive and businessman, famously captures the mood when he declares in an interview, "If a man saves $15 a week and invests in good common stocks and allows the dividends and rights to accumulate, he will be rich. And because income can do that, I am firm in my belief that anyone not only can be rich, but ought to be rich." Raskov is no doubt a bit deluded over how easy it was to become rich. In any case, ordinary people are actually investing and speculating more than ever before in the pursuit of wealth. A significant factor which led to this was the selling of government bonds during the war. All sides in the World War took part in bond campaigns where citizens would purchase a bond from a government and then get their money back and more when the bond matured. Basically, people would invest in their government. And it was a great way to raise public finances without increasing taxes, which is unpopular, or printing more money, which causes inflation. America sold the bonds as Liberty bonds, and they were hugely successful. Investors, large and small, bought up bonds, and millions of ordinary Americans who had never invested before got involved. Brokerage firms also benefited from this, as the vast increase in bonds they sell gives them stronger footholds on the market. Thus, Liberty bonds and their guaranteed profits have now given Americans a taste of investment, and a new fever and trading boom soon takes hold. It's tricky to know the exact numbers for sure, but one contemporary writer estimates that before the war, only around 500,000 Americans had been involved in the stock market, whereas by early 1929, it is as many as 15 million. Bonds are still the most popular form of investment, but ordinary Americans are also increasingly getting involved in speculating on the stock market. Whereas bonds are essentially loans with a guarantee to get it back with profit, stocks buy you part ownership of a company, and the amount of money you make or lose is dependent on how well the company is doing. This is much riskier, but it can also give you much higher returns. The scale of this investment fever is put into material terms by the financial editor of the New York Evening Post in 1928, who estimates that in a typical day, around 4,000 miles, that's 6,400 kilometers, of tape is consumed to tick off trades on the New York Stock Exchange, along with 1.5 million phone calls being made in just one 5-hour session. On top of all this, people are starting to use the stock market as a sort of bank, pumping their savings into it, thinking that like with bonds, there is a guaranteed profit to be made. America
Yikes.
is investing, and it looks good, with the number of millionaires steadily climbing. In 1925, 75 people report an annual income of $1 million. By 1927, this has risen to 283. There are probably even more than this in reality. Profits from investments are easier to hide than salaries, and many find that speculating on the market is an easy way to avoid income tax. Women are also able to take part in this new craze. While the U.S. in the 1920s is hardly a feminist paradise, women are now enjoying greater freedoms in American society. Wives are given more discretion in the handling of family finances, and women's magazines have begun to offer investment information and advice. Radio also plays a role, broadcasting investment ads and financial news at times when housewives will likely be at home. It is estimated that women account for 35% of the total stock market volume. Women make up more than half of the shareholders of AT&T and about 37% of U.S. Steel. And by the numbers, it does seem that women are experiencing unprecedented wealth. But what will Americans do with all this money flying around? Predictably, it goes hand in hand with a massive change in American culture. One place they spend their new money is entertainment. The already rapid growth in popularity of cinema reaches new heights. In 1928, 65 million tickets are being sold each week. A staggering figure when you consider the total population of the U.S. is around 120 million. And it's also becoming a more middle and upper class leisure activity. And films increasingly display stories of opulence and elegance to reflect the ideal of consumption that has taken hold. The economic boom fuels nightclub culture, and the massive increase in the popularity of the radio and phonograph means that jazz music was spread to new audiences. The heady consumerism of the era seems to match this modern and exuberant sound, and already before the decade is over, the 1920s becomes known as the Jazz Age. Dances such as the Charleston become popular among America's youth, and women, with more money to spend than ever, embrace the flapper lifestyle. The statement by renowned classical conductor Leopold Stokowski that jazz has come to stay because it is an expression of the times, of the breathless, energetic, superactive times in which we are living. It is useless to fight against it, captures the relationship jazz has to this new American age. But while the Roaring Twenties creates unprecedented affluence among parts of the population, this new wealth is not spread evenly. Most people across America are still struggling, experiencing no boom, instead facing growing social issues.
To them, they'll be asking, what boom? What are you talking about? There's no boom here. Nothing. Still the same as it were 10 years ago, it's still the same now. So
rural America never really recovers from its post-war slump. Bankruptcies from Midwestern farms quadruple in 1922 and double again in 1923. The South, in particular, sees little economic prosperity. Ravaged by the Civil War half a century ago, and never really adapted to the changes required by the end of slavery. Many parts of the South languish in poverty throughout the 20s. This is especially true for farmers who have to rent their land from landowners. A disproportionate amount of the renting farmers were African American. The struggles of rural America also lead to national tensions as powerful voices representing agrarian interests present Wall Street as the root of their troubles, destroying the traditional way of life. But it isn't just farmers who don't see a boom. All over the United States, money is spread unevenly, with 90% of the country's wealth held by 5% of the population, and just 200 corporations.
has anything really changed after all of those years back? Has anything really changed?
Corporations controlling half of the corporate wealth. A lucky few on the East Coast are accumulating massive fortunes, but the national average wage is less than $1,500 per year. Despite the new popularity of jazz music, African Americans remain on the economic margins and are forced to live in ghettos, away from the wealth of Wall Street. Black music might be the era's zeitgeist, but black audiences are barred from some of the most famous jazz clubs. And
cultural appropriation and the barring of the people who created the music, the hypocrisy.
Black musicians are often undercut and mistreated by white musicians and managers. So, like in many parts of the world, American society is struggling with inequality on various levels that creates tensions and poses a risk that endangers stability and growth. But the most dire threat is coming from the hidden dangers in the credit-based consumer and investment culture that is still creating growth in the United States. Growth that also spills over to the European countries. The rapid rise in stock prices is creating a bubble that will one day have to burst. Savings are almost depleted. Even the banks have lower reserves of capital, now turning to their colleagues in Europe to satisfy their need for new cash to lend and invest. What's more, credit will be catching up with people by the end of the decade, and consumers will soon realize the implications of spending beyond their means. The laissez-faire policies of the U.S. administration may have allowed for unprecedented wealth for some, but it is also leading to unstable, unequal, and unsustainable growth. Despite isolationist economic tendencies in many parts of the world, the economies are becoming increasingly interlocked as investments and profits ebb and flow across the planet. The U.S. economy has become a hub in an international money wheel spinning faster and faster and faster. And if that hub should crack, the wheel driving the world economy will come apart. That would create a global financial crisis. If you'd like to learn more about Henry Ford, including some of his less attractive characteristics, you can find our coverage of him in our World Dictionary series right here. Our Time Ghost Army member for this episode is Jory McCord. Be like Jory and sign up for the Time Ghost forces on Patreon or at timeghost.tv. It is what keeps our wheels rolling. Subscribe, ring the bell, live long and prosper.
Okay, guys, that was Making America Great Again, the Roaring Twenties Between Two Wars, 1927, part 1 of 2. Yes, America was roaring, but it was roaring through credit, through loans. And that kind of roaring growth doesn't last long. You know, it creates a bubble, and that bubble has to burst one of these days. It can't just be sustained indefinitely. And yeah, you know, sometimes people, like when we see our friends, when we see our other family members having the lifestyle that we always dreamt about, you know, it's very enticing to want to also experience the same thing and get the same trinkets and tools and vehicles and homes, you know. And then we take risks, we take big risks. we take out loans, we take out credit to get these things, and we always tell ourselves at the back of our mind, we'll pay it next month, we'll pay it the month after that, we'll pay it the month after that. And, you know, we always try to avoid this situation. And that situation doesn't go away. It just keeps on growing day by day until it comes to a point where it becomes a mountain. And when it becomes a mountain, it will just fall on top of you and just crush you and kill you in the process, you know. So the marketeering, the consumerism culture that was created by these marketers, really, it just contributed to this bubble that was being created in America during that time. And, you know, the same things are still happening today. Although, yes, there's more regulation in terms of, you know, how businesses can conduct themselves, how banks can, you know, give out loans to people and stuff like that. There is more regulation, there is more of a watchdog institutions and organizations in different countries, you know, but there is still this consumerism, should I say, of humanity as a whole, you know, especially nations that are rising up, you know, those nations that were like third world, moving into second world, and then, you know, even the first world nations. You know, the higher we go, the more we want to consume. The more we want to consume, the more credit must be available, the more loans must be available. And these things create bubbles, you know. And like I said before, people just shy away from paying back those loans. You know, we always tell ourselves we'll do it later on. And yeah, you know, some of us were lucky. We make it out of the situation alive. We're able to pay our debts, and we learn from that lesson. And then some of us who are not so lucky, we continue to be in the doldrums looking for a way out. But yeah, this was quite interesting. This was very, very interesting today with this episode. And guys, I guess that's it. If you like the video, remember to give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And I will see you next week, Tuesday. Okay? Bye-bye.